It's about a 50-second call from an elderly person in the neighborhood who hears shots and calls 911. After that, we're going to have, in whatever order, we're going to have some crime scene photos, which will show a lot of evidence markers, holes in a windshield from bullets. There were a lot of bullets in this case. And then we are also going to show a couple rap videos that are brief, just to get a sense of who this defendant is. If you need us to move the screen, if there's anything you need, just tell us now so we're not leaving you hanging. Are we okay? All right, very good. Everybody ready? All right. Good morning, and thank you all for being here. We are here for the DAO's weekly press conference, in which we talk about a couple of things. Our main topic today is going to have to do not just with the data around crime, which I'll get into, but it is also going to have to do with a specific conviction, a recent conviction, in a shooting that occurred exactly 3 years ago today. The shooting I'm speaking about occurred on March the 17th, 2022, in the 3000 block of Page Street. It occurred around 3:45 in the afternoon, essentially exactly when schools were letting out, people were heading home, other people were out taking walks to the local deli to buy a couple things. And it is a very, very, very troubling situation. Not only was a 58-year-old North Philadelphia man struck twice during this shooting, but there were a ridiculous number of fired cartridge casings left at the scene due to the enormous number of bullets that were fired. While there is no real name for this group of people, there is a rap video that they did entitled "Three Goons," and all three of these goons are locked up at this point. It's a good thing because two of them killed 4 people in 17 days back in 2022. One of them is already serving a sentence of 20 to 40 years in connection with just one homicide. And you should also know that this shooting, which is not fatal, this is a non-fatal shooting of one victim. You should also know that this shooting, as I understand it, was carried out by using, among other guns, the gun of a deceased victim from a prior case. I'm going to start with the 911 call. We're going to do that first because I think it frames the issue, and then we'll get a little bit into the data that we see today, and we will get more specifically into all the details of the case. May we have the 911 call, please? I think you already know what to think about that. Here we have a woman, we're not going to put her name in this, who may be a senior, who is distraught, traumatized, at times crying about the horrific situation happening out there. And she says again, she's saying there's a shooting happening out there again. No, it was not the first shooting in that neighborhood. In this period of time, 3 years ago, in March of 2022, there had been a number of shootings, and strangely enough, or maybe it's not so strange, Ty Pittenger, ADA Ty Pittenger, who prosecuted this case in court and achieved convictions, Ty Pittenger already prosecuted another one of that group of shootings that occurred around that time. Let me briefly, if I may, introduce some of the good folks that we have with us here today. We have ADA Bob Wainwright, who's the chief of the DAO's Homicide Non-Fatal Shootings Unit. We have ADA Ty Pittenger, who prosecuted this case and is an ADA in our Homicide Non-Fatal Shooting Unit. Tania Leonard is here. She's the director of our CARES unit, which works very specifically with the families of homicide victims during the first 45 days, but is also closely connected with our Victim Services unit on all kinds of serious cases, including non-fatal shooting cases. We have here in spirit, and we have Mariel Dela Cruz, who is the head of our Victim Witness Services unit. And we have, not on camera, but with us, Sydney Pope, who is a senior assistant DA in our Homicide Non-Fatal Shooting unit and has been involved in going after the whole picture that is represented by this group of people and this group of shootings over an extended period of time. What we are about to present here, I did name everybody, good. What we're about to present here is on the one hand frightening. It's kind of awful to think about so many shootings happening for the most part 3 years ago, and disturbing, but it also needs to be discussed in its context, because what we're talking about here is a group of people who are locked up. And what we're talking about here is a group of people who, in some instances, have already been convicted and are facing accountability for multiple additional shootings in which they were involved. This is a case that in some ways represents the tougher times that we were all experiencing shortly after the peak in the pandemic. But this is also a case that 3 years later we can discuss in the following context. As of today, midnight last night, the 16th of March 2025, the city of Philadelphia has a total of 39 homicides to date. That is without question the lowest number of homicides we've had through midnight on the 16th of March in the last 18 years. I suggest you go to the Philadelphia Police Department's publicly available database to look at it. But it's even more significant than that, because there is solid reason to believe 39 homicides on the 16th of March 2025 is the lowest number of homicides that we have had on the 16th of March in the last 50 years. 50. Just to give you a flavor of this, in 2021, at the peak of the gun violence crisis nationwide and in Philadelphia, there were 103. We're at 39. That was 2021. 2022, 104. We're at 39. 2023, there were 89. We're at 39. Last year, there were 62. We're at 39. We are 23 fewer homicides than last year, which was the all-time record in Philadelphia for improvement in homicide by percent, the all-time record, okay? We are way below that. So obviously that should encourage us to do more and do a lot more. There's nothing about those numbers that takes away the horrific consequences for individuals and communities who've suffered a loss or been injured themselves. But we are smart enough in Philadelphia to hold a couple things at one time. We are going to hold these people accountable for horrific things they did 3 years ago, but we're also going to hold the reality that through a lot of collaborative effort involving a whole lot of people, to include basketball coaches, to include school teachers, to include people who do programming in houses of faith, to include people who run summer camps, to include people who just mentor other kids on the block, to include the Philadelphia Police Department, the FBI, the ATF, the DAO, and a whole bunch of other groups of letters to include all of those governmental entities. Something is going very right compared to where it was a few years ago, and we need to dig deeper and make sure we don't just turn a different direction. By the way, it's not just gun violence. Of the 18 different data points that are listed by the Philadelphia Police Department, and yes, I monitor them every day, including this morning, of the 18 different data points on crime, 17 are down. Only one is up. Among the violent crimes, more than a 10% reduction over last year, which was an amazing year in terms of improving public safety. Property crimes, down over 10% over last year, which was an amazing year. Even retail theft, you hear so much about it. It's down about 10%. That's what's actually going on. So, yes, this is disturbing. This is agonizing. This is violent. This is ugly. It's frankly painful to see young people with so many guns. But this is also what it looks like when 3 years later, through a lot of collaborative effort, we've been able to go a better direction. It's what it looks like when not only modern prevention, but also modern enforcement are working effectively. At this time, it is my pleasure, and I'll certainly have more to say, but at this time it's my pleasure to introduce both ADA Bob Wainwright and ADA Ty Pittenger to come up and guide us through some of the evidence that was presented at trial and some of the other evidence in the case, whether it was used at trial or not, that is relevant to understanding our situation here. As I mentioned earlier, ADA Sydney Pope has been very involved in many of these cases, but due to her, how shall I put it, nonstop work ethic, she will not be standing here with us today. She will just be available in case I mess up and I don't know a detail, and I need to get it from the one who really knows.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to introduce ADA Ty Pittenger, who is a homicide prosecutor. He was prosecuting this particular aggravated assault. It was a jury trial that resulted in convictions last week, and it's directly connected to 4 homicides that preceded it. The final one being 6 days before this aggravated assault, which was exactly 3 years ago today. Over 70 FCCs, 70 shots fired. There were 4 murders in the span of, I believe, 16 days. Is that correct? 16 days. The final one being March 11th of 2022. And one of the guns used in this case was actually, as the DA just mentioned, one of the guns used in this case was was a legally owned firearm of the final of the 4 decedents, the decedent who was killed on March 11th of 2022. So, ADA Pittenger.
And thank you, District Attorney Krasner and ADA Wainwright for letting me speak on this matter and for the introduction. Just before we dive in, I think it's important to note that this group of individuals extends throughout the entire 22nd Police District. They've wreaked chaos and violence in this police district in North Philly for months on end. This is just one example of the dedicated detectives in our shooting investigation group, as well as the police officers who monitor social media, working together. And this wasn't the easiest case. There's no eyewitnesses. It's just surveillance video and Instagram evidence. And specifically, the assigned detective, Robert Conway, did a fantastic job. Couldn't ask for better detective work. Makes my job a lot easier. But just to start, in terms of the video itself, if we want to cue that up.
It's a video of what?
This is going to show you, on this video, you see these 3 individuals that are walking down towards the 3000 block of Page Street. What you don't see in this video is these 3 individuals had already cased the block. This is a premeditated shooting. They planned to shoot somebody on this block. You can see the individuals now returned with COVID masks, and now they began firing. Again, this is 76 shell casings, and we have at least 4 different caliber guns, and we have also at least 5 firearms. So you're going to see 2 of the offenders run back to the 3000 block of Fontaine Street. That's where they were all meeting prior to this shooting. And these 2 individuals were never identified. And so now we're going back to the 3000 Page Street. What you're going to see is, as those 2 individuals that are unknown offenders, they run back to 3000 Fontaine Street, there's a 3rd shooter that will loop back around and meet up with our 2 defendants in this case. This is the first offender. This is Jameer Rice. And this is the defendant that we tried in this case, Vincent Perkins. And what's notable is that Instagram account was being monitored by Philadelphia police officers Christopher Smith and Ryan Clement. They had different posts of him wearing that same sweatshirt with Chinatown written across the front. It's a very unique sweatshirt. Nobody else had a sweatshirt like that in this group. Again, Mr. Jameer Rice has a distinct jacket with big GI on the back of it, which is why with those two individuals in particular we were able to identify. And again, we have another barrage of bullets flying down 3000 block of Page Street. As you recall, that 911 call, the elderly woman was calling saying they're shooting again. This is what she meant. There was a first round of bullets, and then these three offenders put a second round of bullets down the block. And you're going to see Mr. Rice is going to go back to that same block that we saw the first two shooters go back to. That's a 3000 block of Fontaine. And again, this is another post of Mr. Rice wearing that same jacket with an eyeball on it in a different social media post. And his Instagram tag name is First 48 Goon, which is a reference, as District Attorney Krasner said, there's a music video where they call themselves the Three Goons, so that seems to be a moniker that he goes by. And additionally, the First 48 is a television show. It investigates the first 48 hours of a homicide, that if detectives don't get a lead in the first 48 hours, the chances of solving a murder are cut in half. As we know, that Mr. Rice is being charged with 4 murders, so that's no coincidence. That is his screen name for his Instagram. And what you just saw on the screen was the complaining witness in this case. Miraculously, he did not die. He was transported by Philadelphia police to the hospital and was discharged that same day. He actually walked all the way home after being shot twice. And you can see the police car right here is going to get the victim's 911 call, which causes them to go past the crime scene and go pick up the victim. He walked to West Susquehanna Avenue, is where he was, where his residence was, and they transported him to the hospital. But again, this is an innocent man that was walking back from the deli store and just caught in between the crossfire, or not in between. This is a one-way barrage of bullets from this group of individuals. And again, these are the Instagram posts that were part of the identifying factors that we used in the jury trial. Mr. Perkins is wearing those same New Balance sneakers, as you can see in one of his posts. He's wearing those in the shooting as well. And again, as that compilation video finishes, I want to thank Detective William O'Brien. He put this compilation together, and you know, in terms of setting the stage for a jury trial, he did a fantastic job. And now we're going to show you the social media videos and the same individuals that we are prosecuting for these various different crimes in the 22nd District. You're going to see them all together in these videos that were posted in the month prior to the shooting. Mr. Perkins is sitting with an assault rifle on the top of looks like an abandoned car.
What color of it?
With a pink sweatshirt on it. You'll see Mr. Rice had that same jacket on it as well. Again, Mr. Perkins wearing the same pink hoodie. And then you see Mr. Rice in the background with that same jacket with the eyeball on it, holding a gun with an extended magazine.
You should go through the crime scene photos at the end.
Yeah. You can see the amount of guns that this group has. We have assault rifles, multiple handguns with extended clips. And again, these are the music videos that there's two police officers that identified Mr. Perkins and Mr. Rice. They were monitoring these accounts. Officer Smith and Officer Clement, they were monitoring their activities and were able to identify both of them in that surveillance video. And if we last want to go to the crime scene.
Photos.
Yes, the crime scene photos.
Did you want that final video or no?
The final video was.
The green one?
That, yeah, we
did it.
oh, actually, there is a third social media video. So, Vince Perkins, he goes by the stage name Cartier, and this is posted on his account leading up to the murder, or sorry, the shooting. And what we're seeing right now, that clip with the balaclava, that was another unique identifying factor. Because if you notice, when he's doing the shooting, he's wearing a balaclava, and it was the same shape, same distinct features. And also, if you saw the end of that, he has a doughboy, which is a reference to narcotics. As you saw them, they were chefs, and they were cooking up dope. And this, again, was another video that we utilized in the trial as evidence. And now if we want to flip to the crime scene itself, it just gives you a picture of the destruction in terms of what these 5 individuals did to the 3000 block of Page Street. You can see bullet marker identifiers 1 through, I believe that's 1 through 8. That's where Mr. Perkins was shooting. And you can see on the far end of the street was where the 3 shooters were shooting to begin. If you want to go to the next one. Again, just a different view down Page Street. If you want to go to the next slide. This is looking down. If you go to the next one, this is just a prime example of, we're lucky that nobody was in that car. This is 3:48 p.m. Kids were coming home from school. In the surveillance video compilation that was made, you see kids getting off school buses. There was a kindergarten that had to be locked down because of this shooting. And again, we're thankful that nobody was in that car, but you see there was 4 bullet holes that we can count on the windshield, and there was at least 5 to 6 other bullet holes in the front of that car. So, again, thank you to not only the Philadelphia Police Department, but everybody that reported this crime, and made my job a lot easier in terms of prosecuting this case, having the dedicated detectives that work in that shooting investigations group present all this evidence, and we are happy that we took one of these guys off the street. Thank you.
Thank you, ADA Wainwright. I guess I should say Chief Wainwright. And also thank you, ADA Pittenger, for your work on this case. But, last but not least, thank you to ADA Sidney Pope, here in spirit, if not on camera, for all of her incredible work on this case as well. 3 goons, huh? I mean, they didn't name themselves that, but they did a song called Three Goons. The real story of the 3 goons is they're 3, 2, 1, gone. Or maybe just 3 gone. Maybe that's what it is. And they should be, because they present a terrible danger to the community. They're the worst kind of influence on young people. There were 4 people killed in 17 days. Other shootings, other illegal possession of guns, other glorification of an incredibly violent and destructive lifestyle. So it's good that the 3 goons are now 3 gone. That's how it should be. I do want to say this. As awful as this is to see all those evidence markers on the ground, an astounding number of bullets fired cartridge casings everywhere, pieces of the projectiles, in other words, I guess some people would call it the lead of a bullet, everywhere. I mean, it's kind of shocking when you see all of that and you see relatively young people holding assault weapons, proud of it, glorifying it. let's make sure we understand how important it was that the Philadelphia Police Department has a social media unit. That our gun violence task force also, even though they weren't as directly involved here, has a social media unit. This could have been an unsolved case. There were not a bunch of eyewitnesses or snitches or anybody else saying it was that guy, it was that guy, it was that guy. A lot of this was done because of the clothing that was worn. The clothing was specifically picked to conceal their identities. But obviously they're bad at it because that clothing included unique items, unique combinations of items that, you know, these criminals had used to advertise themselves in some sense. This could have been an unsolved and horrific shooting, but for the fact that the Philadelphia Police Department has invested, and wisely so, in forensics, including having social media analysts, having detectives who are astute with following social media, so that when videos came out and there was this jacket and there was that hoodie and there were those sneakers and there was that balaclava, they knew what it meant. So, you know, thank you to the Philadelphia Police Department. Thank you to the detectives who worked so hard on this. Thank you to the attorneys from my office who worked so closely with those detectives to solve these kinds of cases. I'm hoping it is a whole lot quieter on that block now. I think it is, for that poor woman who made the 911 call that we played at the very beginning. All right, at this point, we will go to Q&A. And I will start with Yuri Gershman, Channel 6 ABC. No questions? Thank you, sir. 29 Fox, Pete Santo, any questions, sir? Thank you. Sherry Stone. Let me try to get you the best answer I can. I will tell you that this is one of those cases where not as much is known about the specifics of the motivation as in some, but let me, if you'll just give me a moment, because I'm a big believer in the truth. Unlike some people I know, I'm a big believer. Let me see what I can do. Thank you for your patience. We have huddled, make sure we got our Philly special together. What we can say at this point, because there is still some ongoing investigation related to this, is that we know that in this group of shootings, there were more than one motive. One of those motives was essentially competition over stolen car schemes. There were also revenge motivations over personal relationships, over other shootings, and I guess you could also say over turf when it came to stealing cars. Those seem to be the main motivations here without getting more specifically into all the details. you have any other questions, Ms. Stone?
I think they're all 20s.
At the time of shooting.
Yeah, they were all in their early 20s.
So, thank you for the question. I don't have all the specifics other than to say we believe they were all in their early 20s at the time of the shooting, which of course was, well, this shooting, which of course was 3 years ago. Is that right?
Late teens.
All right. Either late teens or early 20s. All right. Mr. Cipriano. Good to see you again, sir.
Thank you, sir. Same here. Last week, Common Pleas Court Judge Anne Marie Coyle said, and I quote, "I don't believe for 1 millisecond that the documents at issue weren't intentionally misplaced," unquote. In how many other cases have your prosecutors deliberately misplaced documents in order to undo identification?
Well, Mr. Cipriano, always good to see you. Obviously, you're assuming that was said, what was said by a judge named Anne Marie Coyle, who has a certain record, is true. What I will say, because this matter is still in litigation, is that we, at the DA's office, are confident that the appellate courts on appeal, and we are appealing, will get this matter right. That much I will say.
On February 21st, your former chief of homicide testified under oath when Noel processing the case of a convicted killer that he did, quote, "virtually nothing to investigate whether anything he was saying to the court was true." And how many of your other so-called exonerations did your prosecutors do, quote, "virtually nothing" before Noel processing other convicted killers?
Well, Mr. Cipriano, if I recall correctly, you will know that I testified for several hours, or at least a few hours, and addressed the issue of what other people whose testimony I did not observe said. I would just refer you to that trial record for what I said under oath at that time. However, I think another part of your question goes to how many other people did this thing that someone else said he did? Is that your question? I can tell you that
He said it himself, sir.
well, okay. I can tell you that in an office of 700 or so people, I can't speak for everybody else's commentary, nor can I speak for everybody else's recollection, but this I know. I know that the work of the Conviction Integrity Unit has been endorsed by duly elected and often re-elected judges over and over and over and over and over. This is not a situation in which under Pennsylvania law we can simply do what we want. It gets scrutinized by others. Last time I checked, we were at about 45 exonerations. I'm only aware of 2 or 3 in which a judge disagreed with our decisions in terms of what should be the outcome of those cases, and the outcome of exonerations is to overturn a conviction and to take it from there.
Sir, do you feel that this judge had a particular interest?
What I can say is that the Superior Court has previously written in an opinion about her, and the Superior Court has specifically said that they found that she had a bias against the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. That's a truly extraordinary comment coming from a court of appeals, but I have no further comment for you, sir. And thank you.